Back-to-back wins for the Indianapolis Colts. Kevin Bowe and Chris Presley on a dreary Monday morning here in the Nap. Welcome back to another edition of Kevin's Corner. 2-1 football team. A cover. Yeah, man. Healthy, which is really good. Exiting week 3, and we got a lot to cover on this edition of Kevin's Corner. How's the weekend, man? Your Vols struggled, but got it done.
Struggled a little bit, got it done. Didn't cover the 4.5, of course, got the 4. I usually like to stay off of the Tennessee football games to, my heart versus my wallet, but decided to bet on it.
Not smart.
Yeah, and then, as we mentioned off air, your Reds and my Braves meeting in the postseason.
Yeah. So little nooner on Wednesday I saw for game 1. So, yeah, the Reds, incredible finish to the season. And thankfully, they're handing out participation trophies in Major League Baseball this year. So just about everybody gets into the playoffs. And in all seriousness, kudos to Major League Baseball for steering this ship and steadying things.
Right.
If you'd asked me, 2 months ago, I would not have thought we would be here postseason-wise. But things seem to be going well. I guess the NFL had their first positive test with that Atlanta corner, A.J. Terrell. But yeah, still pretty good. No surprise scratches for the Colts on Sunday or anything like that. So today's pod will obviously cover what I liked, a couple things I didn't like, but for the most part, again, a lot of things that I liked from the 36-7 blasting of the New York Jets. I guess let's first just touch briefly on kind of just overall thoughts, Chris. I really tried to drive it home, play to your standard, not your competition. They were closer to their standard. It was not perfect by any means, but closer to your standard than your competition.
Yes.
And it's better than the alternative because, unfortunately, with this franchise, we've seen them lose these sorts of games. Miami last year comes to mind, Jacksonville a couple of years ago. Hell, maybe even Jacksonville week 1. So I think you need to give credit. While it's difficult for me to take away a whole lot from yesterday and say, yes, that right there, they're going to do that in January, and they're going to make a run to the AFC title or something like that, or vice versa. Like, man, that right there, that really, really worries you. It's just not a great measuring stick game for postseason football. Having said that, when you get to the NFL and a 16-game schedule, they're all really important to making the playoffs, and so a win is a win. And you beat a team by 26 in the NFL. It is noteworthy. The Jets are freaking terrible. Their roster sucks. Adam Gase should be fired. It is a pathetic display of NFL football going on in New York right now. But still, 26-point win, or was it more than that, wasn't it? 36-7?
36-7, yeah.
So a 29-point win. I kind of tuned it out there in the fourth quarter, just started writing. Good work. Good work. A little bit better of a measuring stick, I think, coming up here. Certainly Sunday and then the next couple weeks. But, man, I had forgotten it had been nearly a year since you had won back-to-back games.
That's unbelievable.
It was week 8 of last season. So stringing it together, your defense nearly covered the spread just by itself. A lot of good things from this game.
And they played a complete 40 minutes, too. Complete game, I should say, not 40 minutes. Because, like you said, you kind of tune it out towards the end when you're beating a team by that much, but they didn't give up a late touchdown. Defense still stayed engaged. You got that late safety. We're getting closer to on track of that 40 turnovers that they want to have in a season, and that was good to see.
And I thought just the biggest thing, too, was, again, I go back to the health department of just, this time last week, we're talking Malik Hooker done for the year. We're talking Paris Campbell potentially done for the year. You're already dealing with the Marlon Mack thing. Michael Pittman ankle injury goes back in the game and plays and catches footballs after that, and that looked to be it. We'll see nicks and bruises that inevitably come out of every game, but still, the two things that you needed the most was just a win and stay healthy.
Right.
And you got it done, and that's a good day in the NFL.
Yeah, and a good thing we're a Colts podcast, not a Falcons podcast.
Oh, gosh. I mean, a race to be fired first, Adam Gase or Dan Quinn.
Yeah.
Seriously. I can't believe the foul. I told my buddies to bet on the Falcons, and boy, Jesus.
So, yeah, things you liked. I mean, we talked about the defense, talked about the health injuries and the concerns, but the back end, the cornerback playmaking yesterday was great.
It was better than great. It was incredible. It was rare. You forgot Rock Ya-Sin wasn't playing.
Mm-hmm.
And we can break down each interception, but I think we'll start here. I expected stifling defense. The Jets were down their top 5 wideouts. It should have been suffocating, and it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was contesting. It was challenging. I mean, even those plays Darnold made early, it was Houdini-like, some of those escapes. I mean, it looked like luck in 2012 when that O-line was, as good as you and me starting out there. Just some terrific plays with his legs, and it was more of just kind of coverage. The coverage is forcing him to hold on to the ball longer than he wanted to hold on to it. So, really, really good. I guess let's break down each interception, Chris, because I think all 3 of them are so different. The first one by Rhodes, textbook man coverage and textbook knowledge of situational football. I think it was a 3rd and 6, something like that. I've got the game book in front of me. Where is it? 3rd and 6 for the Jets there. Rookie wideout. As soon as Lawrence Cager gets just past the sticks, Rhodes knows what's coming. Comeback route. Boom. I know it. Sits on it, reads it. He's in better position to catch the football than the rookie is. And Darnold makes no other read, locks in on it. I don't know how much Rhodes was really looking at Darnold's eyes. I think he's more reading the wideout. And not only do you make the pick, but I couldn't believe just how instinctually aggressive he was than to turn upfield.
Right.
And take it to the house. A lot of times, guys pick balls off and they aren't thinking clearly and they go down, which whatever, it's fine. It's all a bonus. But boy, does that send a message? Does that set the tone? I always think back to the Matt Hasselbeck comment, Green Bay, Seattle. Like, I want the ball, and we're going to score.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's Rhodes took it and just turned upfield. So, boy, that was picture perfect. The second pick, it had to have been a busted coverage. I think Rhodes just screwed that up, honestly. Because Kenny Moore's pointing at him pre-snap, like, you stick with that man is almost what it seemed like. Like, these two are going to crisscross. You stick with that. Everyone else is in man. And Rhodes, didn't really celebrate the pick that much. After the game, he was very coy about the coverage. I think he screwed up. Darnold thinks he screwed up. Darnold called it a busted coverage after the game.
Mm-hmm. But
the thing about it, Chris, is if you're going to screw up, you better get your eyes on the quarterback, especially in the red zone. The nice thing is if you're going to screw up in a short area of the field, you don't have a large chunk of the field to cover.
Correct.
And I thought Xavier did a really nice job of locking eyes with Darnold. Again, Darnold looked, I'm sorry, I know it's low-hanging fruit, but I thought he was seeing ghost again. It was just kind of like, wait, what? I know you're missing all these wideouts, but you're locking in big time. Huge interception there. Takes away at least 3 points, if not more. And then the third pick, TJ Carey talked about this after the game. And this was intriguing to me after the Jacksonville game. I asked Matt Eberflus about the defense and the busted assignments that have felt like looked to be miscommunication to me week 1. Eberflus had mentioned, which I thought was encouraging, and I said this on that Wednesday podcast after the Jacksonville game. When Eberflus mentioned we're trying to do things differently on third down this season, that caught my ears. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's different. And Carey, even though he hasn't been here, he's such a great quote. He talked about it, and I mentioned this in the story I posted late last night on 1075thefan.com. Pre-snap, post-snap reads, we want it to look different for quarterbacks. What you see pre-snap is not what it's going to be post-snap.
Right.
And the Carey interception is that. I think it's a very man-look pre-snap, settle into zone. Carey won't have an easier interception in his entire career. It's his first pick six since college, which for a guy that's been in the league for 7-ish years, that's quite a stat. So that was just kind of the icing on the cake. But that play, more so than any of the three, I think is very indicative of the strides that this pass defense needs to make, is starting to make, and should become the norm. Disguising. That was the big word we use all offseason long of be a better disguising unit. So just, great playmaking, man. 6 picks in the last 2 games.
Right.
That one was for that was a win for Chris Ballard yesterday.
Oh, for
Quincy
sure.
Wilson, you traded away, is on that sideline. Pierre Desir, who you cut, is on that team. Desir, I thought that was kind of a questionable pass interference penalty in the end zone. T.Y., I think, laughed a little bit about it. But he makes he has the penalty. Rhodes has the big plays. T.J. Carey makes a big play as well. And let's throw Kenny Moore into the group when we're talking cornerback playmaking. No one can tackle Sam Darnold. Leave it to 5'9", 180-pound Kenny Moore to bring him down for that sack. So really, really good playmaking from that unit. And just, a positive step. It wasn't Sam Darnold going 80% on you like he did as a rookie. It wasn't Gardner Minshew going – it's not perfect. We'll get into that. But it is a positive step forward for this Pass defense, and that was a must after week 1.
And for me, I feel like we knew about Rhodes' size coming into the season, but the deflection last week, the interception, there's some plays that he makes that just pops and stands out on the tape.
I'm glad you brought that up because Xavier was pretty adamant during the offseason that he felt like he was in good position last year, but he struggled at the point of attack, the moment of truth stuff that we always talk about. Think about the play against Thielen last week that you talk about. His length, making that play for the pass deflection at the last moment. Obviously, the play he makes on Cager on that second, third down of the game and to have the pick six. I mean, high risk, high reward was kind of the thinking with Rhodes. Not financially. It was a one-year deal.
Yeah.
Like, that's not very high risk, high reward. It's more of his play on the field. And, so far through 3 games, we've kind of seen that. Week 1, it was Cromartie-like in a bad way from Xavier Rhodes. But the last 2 weeks, it's been much better from him. And I think he offers you a little bit more with that. So without Rock Yassin, game ball to the entire cornerback group.
And then jumping to the offensive side of the ball, Phillip Rivers playing like he did last week, just efficient, high pass percentage, just getting the job done. Nothing spectacular, but gets the job done.
Yeah, that's really well said. I mentioned the stat last Wednesday, above 75%, above that 7.5 yards per attempt. He was 80% on Sunday. He was 10 yards per pass attempt.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to rip Luck, but it just seems like an easy comparison. Luck did it 5 times in his career. Phillip Rivers played 3 games with the Colts. He's done it 3 times.
That was such a crazy stat to me last week when you told me that.
And trust me, it's crazy. I looked it up and I'm like, no way. I gotta look this up. I gotta double, triple check this. No turnovers, still no 3 and outs. Man, it's just been very efficient. Again, there are things with this offense that still need some tweaking and some fixing, but in the 2 key metrics, you've made this massive jump to where you're able to sustain drives a little bit better. You're just getting a more efficient passing offense.
Right.
Pass protection, really good. The Mo Alley Cox, big play over the middle of the field. That is your guards getting out and getting to the edge, helping out the tackles at the last second. It's a subtle play by Rivers. He steps up in the pocket and just doesn't panic. I feel like that's a play that, last year you might have got a little panicky from your quarterback there. So better in the red zone, 2 for 2. The near red zone still struggled a little bit, but I like that. I think you're going to have to be more creative schematically in the red zone this season without Campbell, still without Burton. And Frank tried to do that. He brought Doolin on the field, tried to disguise something there with him. He had Danny Pintner on the field on the Mo Alley Cox touchdown. So you show the jumbo personnel, and then you play action it to a wide open Mo there. So 2 of 2 in the red zone. So again, step in the right direction there. But Phillip Rivers continues to be an upgrade at quarterback, and that is what we've tried to stress all offseason long, that the Colts believe this is an upgrade, and the ways they believe it's an upgrade, we are seeing.
Correct.
It's been the mental chess match, get the ball out quick, avoid the sacks, high completion percentage, a yards per attempt number that's just enough. We still haven't seen the big vertical, even the Alley Cox. We don't call that, the big Russell Wilson over the top to Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf acting like just an idiot. But you are getting enough right now out of your passing offense.
Yeah, and what helps Rivers is, I know another point you wanted to touch on it, back to a more sure-handed T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, and Chris, that game will not go down as one of T.Y. Hilton's greatest games by any means, but I did want to throw this in here as one more thing that I liked. Is just, again, positive step forward. I don't know if it's a jolt for him. It's 3 catches and 3 targets for 52 yards, but it's better than what he had shown the first couple of weeks. You know, he mentioned talking to Grandma. I know Reggie Wayne reached out to him as well last week. First pass play of the game.
Yes.
Right there to Hilton, I think, to try and give him a little bit of a jolt. So still, you need more production from him. He didn't really play the fourth quarter. So obviously that, plays into maybe he would have had 4 for 70 or something like that, or a little bit more. But it's, a needed step forward. Having said that, you still need T.Y. Hilton to be that dog for you.
And I love that you have five wide receivers who averaged over double digits per catch.
Really?
It's just great, yeah.
So that was Fountain was in there as well?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
What was Fountain? Was it 2
Fountain
catches?
had 2 for 23, so 11.5.
And nice job by him. Just kind of, there were a couple mentals that I noticed with him, but still, Pittman gets hurt during the game for a few series. You need Reese Fountain to come in here, and that is the one positive that you like of it was a fourth. You don't usually have that in the NFL where you can play your freshmen, if you will, or play your guys that hardly see the field. I think Reese Fountain needed that first NFL catch. Needed that, and good work by Pascal. Played the most snaps of any wideout, and Doolin getting in the game. You're going to need these guys to step up for you.
I know with a game like that, like we said, it's kind of hard to nitpick at what you didn't like since it was or felt like a complete game. But what didn't you like?
Just in general, Chris, I didn't feel like the Colts were 29 points better than the Jets. And I know you can get really skewy with that, and it can seem like you're nitpicking, but we will critically analyze this game like any, I think, human being who covers an NFL team should, and certainly how the coaching staff should be critically evaluating. You love the playmaking, and it's rare. I mean, since 1970, the first time you had 2 pick sixes in a game. I mean, just absurd playmaking. That can sometimes cover up how big of a discrepancy it looks on the scoreboard. When you see 36-7, you're like, holy shit, that's dominant. But there are a lot of stats you can look to in the box score that doesn't indicate such a blowout there for you. I would say the trench play in the first half was disappointing to me. I love Frank Gore, first ballot Hall of Famer in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You have that longevity at
that
position. I say first ballot. Is he faster than me? I mean, is Frank Gore 4 yards per carry at halftime and Jonathan Taylor 3.1 yards per carry at halftime? No. When they're missing 5 wideouts and they still are able to get 4 yards per carry, and this run defense has been in the first 2 years under Eberflus pretty good. It's had some shaky moments early in the season. Taylor in the run game, we'll get into this more. I think there's a Twitter question about it. I don't think the vision is where it needs to be. Is it the most stunning thing right now? No. And again, I'll get into that a little bit later, but I also think the run blocking. Quentin Williams, showed to Quentin Nelson oh yeah, I'm a top 5 pick.
Yep.
And there were some plays there in the first half you'd like to have back. Still, just not the establishing of the line of scrimmage that you'd like to see. I think from the run game output for the Colts, a little bit spotty tackling as well. Darnold again doing kind of his Houdini thing there. And then lastly, and Frank Reich mentioned this on more than one occasion, third downs. Colts are the worst team in the NFL right now on third down. It's like 30%. I think they were 3 of 10 yesterday. So that is an area that has to improve in that. So, I mean, if you're going to tell me the Jets lose Mekhi Becton, they're already down 1 tackle, and I just would have liked, you didn't have that D-line sack until the Justin Houston mop up there late. It was Kenny Moore getting the 1 sack. So, I'm perfectly fine being critical in a few areas because I think it should be, because this is not the barometer. The Jets are the laughingstock of the NFL. We had could audibly hear "Fire Adam Gase" chants inside of Lucas Oil Stadium, which is so sad and so hilarious all at the same time. So this is not the barometer that you go off of, but this is the recent game, so you analyze it like you should. But those are just a couple things that I think you got to look at.
Any murmurs or rumblings in the press box when Hot Rod missed the field goal?
Nothing too alarming. Nothing too just. I think he was in such a rhythm, but when he hit the first extra point off the upright, that kind of gets your attention, and then and that kissed in, and the second one, really had no chance of going in once it hit that upright. What was it 42? Was that the distance on it? I'd have to go back and look that up. So far, what is he? 8 of 10?
Yeah.
41 was the missed field goal there. That was just disappointing because you felt like, that was a chance to kind of, step on him a little bit there. And selfishly through these first 3 games, I think what I'm disappointed for Hot Rod is just he hasn't had the ability to kick a long one.
True.
You've only had game pressure on you in 1 game so far. And he has, I think 44 is his long, I believe, I'm not mistaken, so far.
I think it's somewhere around there, yeah.
So, that's just selfishly, again, something you would like. Obviously, you see what Stephen Gostkowski's doing yesterday.
My goodness.
Absolutely absurd there with those kicks. But let's mention special teams, man. Control and field position again. 16-yard advantage there. That is huge.
Yep.
Huge. 25 yards last week, 16 this week. Bubba Ventrone and that group. I think it was Matt DM me on Instagram, pointed out just a great note. Rodrigo Blankenship hasn't had a Rigoberto Sanchez hasn't had a touchback since week 2 of last season.
Really?
Whew. That's a year of football, folks.
My goodness.
Absurd what you're getting from him. So I think the average drive start for the Jets was the 18-yard line. The Jets, the Colts were the scratch golfer. The Jets should have been a 25 handy. The Jets should have started every drive from the Colts 18, and I don't think they would have won this game anyways. That's just how sorry the Jets are. But yeah, let's dive into Twitter questions.
All right, first one this week comes from Tanner. Said he saw a tweet from Stephen Holder saying the team was very underwhelming, quote unquote, by this Colts team. Any thoughts on that? At this point, it had only been 2 weeks through the season for the improved defense, but that's 2 more than we had last year. Maybe you can help decipher what Steven was talking about.
Yeah, I did see that. I saw Robert Mathis be the bully on Twitter that Robert Mathis loves to be. I believe the tweet came at halftime. To be frank, Colts were up 10, but I was probably a little underwhelmed by what I saw from the Colts in the first half. Again, I go back to the individual plays, it can just skew some things a little bit.
True.
When you get that crazy playmaking, it's awesome and it's huge and it's better than the alternative. But when you're talking about making kind of grander statements about the team as a whole, it wasn't a very dominant first half from the Colts. So what I can't stand about Twitter is when people tweet at you, well, this tweet aged poorly. At the time, that's why I tweeted it. The Colts, were terrible on 3rd down at one point. Then if they get 4 in a row, okay. It's a whole different circumstance. So I have no issue with Steven's tweet.
Colts fan in Cincy, is it okay to be cautious about going all in on the defense until they've played some better teams like those starting after week 9? The Jags looked better than advertised, but letting Minshew go 19 of 20 is still inexcusable. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy, but I'm cautious.
Yeah, no, I don't know if the Jags look better than advertised. I think the Jags will be drafting top 10 again. Very fair statement. Very fair. Some really encouraging things. I would say that what I'm seeing from this pass defense has been encouraging. What I'm seeing from the pass offense and those key metrics that we talk about is also encouraging. But yes, the barometer has been, I would say it's probably a decent chance the 3 teams you've played are drafting in the top 10 this season. So there's a level of you play who shows up on your schedule, but we don't, on September 28th, we don't need to be sitting here saying, yep, 1 and done in the playoffs, the Colts right there, or AFC Championship Colts team right there. No, it's fun to look ahead, and we do look ahead, but Yeah, you're always curious. When is Water going to find its level? Last year, the Colts start 5-2, but you didn't. Not every record is the same. The Bears at 3-0. I mean, are they really an undefeated football team? Like, yes, in record, and that helps about getting into the playoffs. But no one's sitting here acting like the Bears are going to. Bears just benched their starting quarterback.
Yeah,
and they're starting the year 3-0. That shows you what the staff thinks of their football team so far.
This one comes from David. What were the tight end snap counts? Jack Doyle was healthy but quiet. Mo Alley Cox is starting to carve out a nice role on this team. Any word on Trey Burton's status?
Okay, a lot there. Alley Cox had 36 snaps. I think that's 36 of, I want to say that's like 60%.
Yes, I believe you're correct.
For Mo. Doyle was 32, and Tungiai was 16. I am surprised about 0 targets for Jack in that. Snap counts are a little skewed in the fourth quarter of a blowout.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something to keep. But, I mean, I would agree with what David's saying. Mo Alley's really starting to carve out a nice role. Now, Trey Burton, Frank was asked about after the game. He's eligible to come back this week. It's his former team that just cut him.
Yep.
You would think he'd like to play. Frank did say he's not all the way back, has made some strides, but not all the way back. I hear that. My gut tells me maybe no on him for this week.
Okay.
But let's monitor it, of course. And I also say that because, he admits rushed back last season for the opener.
Yes.
Is he more hesitant? Now, seeing Chicago on the schedule might get you thinking a little differently, but still, that is something to note.
This one comes from Big Bama. From the past couple of seasons, do you see a little bit of growth in terms of the scheme from the defense? And who do you think is the X factor moving forward besides the big three in Leonard, Kenny Moore, and Buckner?
Big Bama, I do see some things differently, which I did not say 2 weeks ago. I'm seeing more unique things. It goes back to the third down mindset that we talked about earlier. It's just needed. You have quarterback. NFL rules favor the offense. Point blank.
Correct.
They just do. So you've got to do things that can confuse opposing QBs. And the easiest or the most advantageous thing to do is you come to the line of scrimmage and you see one thing, and as soon as that ball snaps, you show another.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's a lot more complex than how I just laid it out, but it's needed.
Yes.
And I am starting to see that, Big Bama. Biggest X factor after the big three?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the easy name to go after yesterday, but I mean, Xavier Rhodes and Rock Yassin would probably be right up there just because I think your outside corners mean so much. I would probably throw an edge rusher. Does Kamoko Ture come back in November and give you this jolt? I'd place those guys in the X Factor category.
You happy with what you're seeing out of Okereke?
Yeah. I would selfishly like to see a little bit more. He really played a lot more than Anthony Walker yesterday.
Yes.
With the Jets heavy in their 3 wide personnel groupings. Just a little bit more from him. He is this tremendous athlete. I think he can be more of a splash player type of guy for you. I don't want to get too greedy with the playmaking because it's been really good the last 2 weeks, but I would like to see just a tad more.
Okay.
Pretty solid, but yeah, just a tad more.
This next one comes from Aaron. Has the overall good play of the defense, speeding up the quarterback's clock, helped the, quote, on-the-job training, end quote, for younger members of the secondary?
That's a good thought there. I mean, honestly, Chris, I thought yesterday was more coverage.
I did too.
I mean, it's I really thought it was really good coverage from you, and I didn't think the D-line created, well, I thought they created some pressure early, but just couldn't finish those plays. Not enough pressure to force incompletions or throwaways or things like that. So, yeah, I honestly think the disrupting of timing has been more secondary related. I know Buckner had the big, I think the Jets forgot to block him, and DeForest Buckner showed off some crazy speed at 6'7", 300.
No
but
kidding.
Much more of a quieter day from Buckner in that realm.
This next one's from Matt. Pick sixes against the Colts JV team are nice, but does it mask the fact that the same team drove down the field on us twice? What do you see as something the Colts defense still lacks after 3 weeks besides a steady pass rush?
Dude, I don't even know if I call them the JV team, Matt. Seriously. That's like if you got a big JV roster, maybe it's your JVB. I don't. Boy. I'd like to see him a little bit better against the run, like I was saying earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a steady pass rush. I know they have some really nice pass rush numbers in some areas, but there's such a big rush with 4 group that I would like to see just maybe more so off the edge, a little bit more of that from them. I just thought, 2 backup tackles in there, banged up center. Again, you're not worried about any of their wideouts to where you need a double or have help over the top or anything like that. I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more there.
David wants to know, besides the obvious addition of pressure up the middle with Buckner, what's the one biggest change in our defense from last year to this year?
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit stickier on the outside and just more opportune. Better position to make plays on the ball. And really, it's just been the last 2 weeks. I cannot throw week 1 in this at all. But the last 2 weeks, I feel like they've just done a better job of really from the, think back to the first Vikings drive of the game and the first Jets drive of the game. Both moved the ball. Well, I should say the second Jets drive after the pick 6. Both moved the ball down the field. But Adam Thielen's making heroic catches.
Yes.
On that first drive for the Vikings. And I mean, again, Darnold was running for his life and making plays off script as well. So you made things difficult for them. That was encouraging to see. It wasn't this comfortability in this easing into the game like you saw from Minshew week 1. So yeah, I'd say just stickier, disrupting at a higher rate.
This one comes from Jason. Were the picks by Darnold more of a bad quarterback, or our defense tricking the quarterback into bad throws?
Yeah, Darnold made a few plays yesterday that I'm like, man, does he suck?
You never knew what you were going to get with him. Like you said,
Yeah.
He did make some plays that I thought, too, like, I kind of looked like Luck the way he was able to move.
Right.
And then sometimes even him, hitting himself on the helmet, like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on Darnold. And obviously he's dealing with just a slew of injuries. I think you got to break down each one, Jason, which we did earlier. I do think Rhodes busted that coverage in the end zone. TJ Carey, that was definitely a disguise. And then Xavier, just pure man. So it was a little bit of everything on the 3 picks, which I think is encouraging as well.
Yes.
It wasn't just you had some one go-to look or it was – but on all 3 of them, Darnold's eyes, man, I mean, he didn't even scan the freaking field, I felt like. So that obviously aids you there. And, I mean, hell, it's not like – Foles, Baker, and Burrow the next 3 weeks probably. I mean, you aren't facing a top 10 quarterback now. Hell, I watched Aaron Rodgers last night, and man, you talk about a measuring stick coming in here late November. He's throwing to guys named Allen and Marquez. Come on.
Yeah.
Rodgers, Russell Wilson, your MVP through 3 weeks.
No kidding. All right, this one's from Stan. Fair or unfair? We won't have a fair barometer for who the 2020 Colts actually are until we finish their Titans series week 12.
That's a good one, Stan. I would maybe say a little earlier than that. Now, if you need like a multiple game sample size, probably the Titans week 12. But don't you play Baltimore before that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure you play. Do you play Green Bay before that?
Yes.
So, yeah, you're going to have a couple of games that you would call playoff teams for sure. And I think what we need to look at the course and the flow of a 16-game schedule in 2 different sort of scenarios. In one scenario is this. The NFL season is 16 games long. You lose one to a bad team, you're behind the 8 ball, and you can't afford to do it again. If you lose another, it's going to be difficult to make the postseason. Mm-hmm. So the Colts continue to avoid disaster. A loss yesterday would have been disastrous.
Yes.
So that is a positive. That is a good job, Colts. I don't want to sound like I'm talking to Rosie Bowe here, but it's just like it's basic. It's just simple. But we've seen this team again. The loss to Miami in 2019. The loss to Jacksonville in 2018. Was the loss week one of those losses to the Jags?
Right.
Okay, if it was, at least you've avoided another one. So you can look at it like that and just be very conscious of yesterday was a positive result. It is a win. It is a 2-1 football team. That's where I think a lot of people thought they'd be. At least I did through 3 weeks. So that's good. Then you can also look at it as measuring stick for the month of January. How can this team do in the playoffs against better competition? And that's why I go back to, you've got encouraging signs. The pass defense, more disruption, more playmaking, the passing offense and that efficiency. Like, there are some encouraging signs. There are also some discouraging signs. You are dead last in the league in third down. I think the Colts rank I want to say it's 24th in rushing yards per carry right now.
Wow.
I mean, that's not a figure we would have expected against these teams through the first 3 weeks. So, again, there's encouraging and there's discouraging stuff. And it's our job to kind of sift through all that BS and try to make an accurate observation. As of right now, I said 10-6 before the start of the season. Yeah, I'm not wavering too much off that. I've seen some 9-7, some 8-8. I've probably seen some moments of 11-5. Maybe not much higher than that because I know the back half of the schedule is much more difficult. But that's kind of how I look at things right now, Stan.
Kevin, Alex feels like the defense is playing great, but it seems they could get more sacks and not enough speed from the outside. Do you have any updates on Toure, and when can we expect play from Banagoo?
I mean, Banagoo's playing. He's just been kind of quiet, you know. I felt like yesterday could have been a good slump buster fourth quarter for him, and you never really felt it. We won't say Toure until at least November. You know, that's the rules on the physically unable to perform list. So, yeah, I mean, you're right, though. Kenny Moore had the blitzing sack. Just a great job by Moore to bring down Darnold. Mm-hmm. But then again, nothing until Houston took advantage of the backup left tackle late in the game. So, yeah, I think that's fair. Speed on the outside is a worry with that pass rush.
This one comes from Craig. Great game, but what is more concerning, the offensive line and the rush attack, which only generated 3.8 yards per carry average against a mediocre Jets defense, or the Colts defensive line, which generated 2 sacks against the Jets O-line that had both of their starting tackles out for most of the game?
Yeah, that's a good question, Craig. I could probably make cases for both, but I would say I expect more from the run game. You know, that's where all the draft capital is, on that O-line, and hell, even Taylor. So I would probably say expect a little bit more from the run game. Yeah.
Kenyon says, I'm sitting here trying not to be critical with the lead that we have in the fourth. But Hines is in 1 and 2 downs, and then we put Taylor in for the third down. Is that to disguise for later in the game? Feels like we use Hines on the wrong downs and plays every week. Sidebar, also listens every week, and when he was deployed in Iraq last year, this gave him a little taste of normal and feeling at home. Keep it up and appreciate it.
Love hearing that, Keenan. First, thank you, for your service and obviously making the ultimate sacrifice. And I speak for Chris and I say we're glad that we can provide a bit of relief for you.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. The personnel groupings did stand out to me a bit yesterday, Chris, in that they're interesting. And, Frank, I remember last year he was really frustrated at one point, or kind of like a bye week thing that you evaluate, in that the Colts were tipping their hand too much with Nyheim Hines. Basically, and I don't know if these numbers are exactly accurate, but like at one point last year, the Colts were throwing the ball, I think 75% of the time Nyheim Hines is on the field.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to tip his hand that much. So I think you are trying to do a little bit of window dressing, which, again, I know there's a fine line in that because we talk about the fourth down. Was Jacksonville the fourth down? Or I kind of forget the fourth down, where Hines was in the game and he got stuffed on that 4th and 1. So I know, again, there is a balance to that, but there also is a balance, and I don't want to tip my hand too much with that. So maybe that's a little bit of, kind of that. I also noticed at one point yesterday you had a wide receiver grouping on third down of Fountain, Pascal, and Doolin. I mean,
right.
I think Pittman was banged up, which, again, sometimes this stuff happens. Guys take themselves out of games. It's an equipment issue. It's something weird. But, I mean, how is Hilton not on the field in that third down there? So I hear you out, Keenan, but I'm not going to nitpick it too much because I do think you've got to have a bit of unpredictable nature to you with your personnel groupings.
This next one's from Daniel. I know it's completely irrational, but I cringe when Brissett comes in. I'd rather have Eason come in for garbage time. I feel like Brissett made some plays, but at the same time, the offense was in a skewed play-calling sequence because he's the QB, so it becomes self-fulfilling problems, which are avoidable.
Man, Jacoby's just a punching bag, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first off, I wouldn't cringe when Jacoby Brissett comes in the game because it probably means the game's over.
True.
So, first off, I go there. And this is just a weird thing about the NFL and rules about how many guys you can dress. People be ripping Frank Reich if he dressed Jacob Eason as a third quarterback and then suffered 3 corner injuries in the game, and there's no cornerback to turn to. So, this is just the unfortunate nature of the NFL of this isn't college football where you have the red shirt rule of guys can play 4 games or whatever and still have the red shirt, and I can go play my 4-star freshman and make sure he doesn't transfer and get some good game reps under his belt. So, as much as I want to sit here and be like, yeah, Frank Reich should have known they were going to win 36-7, and he could have got Jacob Eason 3 series of work. Yeah. Obviously, I'd rather have Eason dressing, but I could not be more selfish. I'm not the head football coach of this team who just has seen his team suffer through a lot of injuries early in the season.
This is from Isaac. Although it's versus the Jets, what's your opinion of Rhodes so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, certainly some really, really good and some pretty bad. It kind of goes back to the earlier point I made of the high risk, high reward. One thing I've noticed, Chris, I feel like he's gotten nicked up every game.
Yeah.
So that kind of has me worried of he's definitely come to the sideline, I think, in all 3 games with some sort of injury. So and he's been pretty durable throughout his career. So that's something that I'm kind of worried about moving forward. But, yeah, I mean, it's been, what he did yesterday, dude. And that's the thing. If you're going to screw up like he probably did on that busted coverage, that's where your instincts, that's where you just got to make up for it with your athletic ability. And he did that. Great read on Darnold to make that pick. So, I'd say kind of high risk, high reward so far.
Brett wants to know, is this the best top-to-bottom defense that the Colts have had in 15-plus years, or have they just played 3 not-so-great teams?
Oh, boy, I don't know if I can go that far back. 15-plus years is a long time, and that's, that 2005 defense, even 2009 defense was really good. I think if you ask a lot of former Colts players, they think that 2007 team was one of their better teams as well. So, yeah, I can't go there. I mean, certainly you've played some just terrible football teams. But I also think there's a level of just, again, the job well done notion that we should give of, like, there's a level of the Colts should be doing this against these quarterbacks and these offenses. But hell, they haven't always done this.
Right.
And never to this extent. So that should be commended of, we saw Darnold have a career day in his rookie season. Kirk Cousins is a much more accomplished quarterback than these other 2. And Minshew shredded them. I guess Minshew still shredded them week 1. But still, I just think that it doesn't sound like the greatest compliment in the world, but they are doing things against poor offenses that they haven't always done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pat on the back.
Kevin, Scotty's just meh about this win.
I think everybody is, man.
He doesn't want us to get him wrong. He loves the win, but felt like we allowed way too many yards in the first half for a team that's just bad. Doesn't bode well against teams that are actually good teams.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of validity to that statement. It was not a total domination. It was not. We have laid that out. So I also think of if there's like a game that I will think is least indicative of what this team will look like late December into January, it's yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You hear the noise. You know the Jets stink.
Right.
It's a bunch of your former players. How motivated are the Jets? And like all of that impacts the game. The intensity level for the Jets will be vastly different than, honestly, next week. Chuck Pagano's going to be one motivated SOB this week with his team. He's going to be, say what you want about Chuck. This is going to mean a lot to him.
Right.
So, Yeah, it sucks because it's a 60-minute game, and you have to evaluate it because, again, it is one of 16, but I just don't think you can draw a bunch of grand conclusions. When you've done things multiple weeks in a row, that's where you draw a little bit more of like, oh, wow, defensive playmaking again showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, the third down struggles happen again. Like that's a little bit more concrete, but just kind of the individual outliers,
This one's from Trenton. Is this Colts D legit, or are we seeing something like the Patriots last year where they were a top defense in the league, but then when they played the cakewalk part, of their schedule, but later dropped off during the last half of the season and the playoffs?
I thought Darius Leonard had a really good quote last week about it of like, I don't care that people are saying we're a good defense in week 2. I want them to say it in week 15 or week 16. And I think that's such an accurate statement of sustaining it in this league, doing it week in and week out, doing it against different types of quarterbacks, different types of offenses, all those things. That's the ultimate barometer for you. So I think it's an improved unit. I do not think it's a legit, whatever, I don't know, does legit qualify as, I don't know, top 5, top 3. I don't know what that qualifies, but I think right now it's, if I'm projecting, if you're going to be like, where will the Colts rank in defense come week 17? I think it'll be better than half. I think it'll be sniffing right around 10. I just don't think this is as dominant of a defense as we've seen the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. This one's from Bailey. Do you think sometimes Taylor misses out on extra yard opportunities on some runs? Could just be him wanting to stick behind the O-line. We know he has the open field talent. Just have to get to that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I noticed more of the Taylor vision questions yesterday. And Chris, I kind of go back to, and I find myself doing this when I was reminded of Frank Gore's running yesterday. I mean, Gore's vision is incredible. Because he's not fast. He's old. He's torn an ACL in both knees. I mean, it's remarkable what he's doing. But I remember that 2017 season, and you had Gore and you had Marlon Mack. And I mean, athletically gifted running backs at that point in their career, they couldn't be at 2 different parts of the spectrum.
Correct.
But remember Mack's running style that year. It was, I'm going to run to the outside, and I'm going to act like I'm the fastest kid on the playground, and no one's going to catch me. And you can't sustain that in the NFL. That is not it might work every now and again, but it's impossible to rely on that week in and week out. Whereas Gore was like, I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I'm going to stay between the tackles, folks, and find those creases, find a little bit of daylight here or there. It won't be the prettiest thing, but it's going to be somewhat effective for me. I sense a little bit of that with Taylor right now. He's not bouncing everything out like Mac did, but I think he's been a really kind of 1-lane, maybe 2-lane runner. Now, that move he made on 4th and goal from the 1, that's beautiful. I mean, that's a free rusher right there, and he could have lowered it and said 230, take on whatever, some DB for the Jets, McDougal, I think it was maybe. And the jump cut he had in the red zone earlier in the game, I mean, trust me, there's some stuff that's like.
Yeah.
But the vision, I just don't know if he's totally confident in himself and how the blocking schemes are up front. Maybe just not as decisive with it. And again, this is 3rd game of his rookie season. It's just he was very fortunate to play at Wisconsin behind that offensive line. Things look differently here. You're going to hit early. You're going to get hit earlier in plays. All of those things. So, yeah, I think his vision can – and look how Marlon Mack's vision developed. Probably, honestly, playing with Gore really helped Marlon.
True. But
obviously it's developed in a very positive manner. So I'm still remained encouraged by Taylor because I know there's more there. And I know he's a high-character guy, and I know it's a high ceiling. And I think this rushing offense, like I said, it's probably been somewhat disappointing. I mean, 23rd, 24th in yards per carry. So, yeah, I think a little bit better vision from him, and that is big.
K. Shrews wants to know, is it just them, or are the stars of the defense playing very quiet at the beginning of this season? Leonard, Willis, Okereke, Houston, and somewhat Buckner just don't seem to be the ones making the big plays through the first 3 games.
I mean, I don't know if I can go all the way there. I mean, Houston's had some sacks. Buckner's, wasn't all pro looking last week. I mean, Leonard Leonard he puts these expectations through the roof. It's like, we assume he should have 2 interceptions and a fumble every week. And I wouldn't categorize Willis and Okereke as stars by any means. That's a disservice to the word star. Both nice players, and both could be potential big frontline guys for you. So, obviously, you got big playmaking from other guys yesterday in this defense. So, yeah, I'm not maybe a hair quiet. Buckner, you played 3 games. Buckner's been an all-pro in 1 and not an all-pro in the other 2. So I guess if you're looking at it in that sense, I'd argue how much of a star even, again, Houston is at this point of his career. I think he's a really solid player, but, I don't think he's a bona fide top 10 edge rusher in this league or something like that. So, yeah.
Andrew was happy to be in the stadium yesterday for the game. It was the first game of his 4-game package. He says, I know we had a great win, but I still feel like there's something that is missing. I'm still not happy with the offense. I believe we only scored 17 points with the starting offense. I'm not counting the defense. I'm not counting the defensive scores and the field goal when Brissett came in at QB. I feel like they should have scored more on the Jets defense. It just concerns me when we start playing better teams and play tighter games. Thoughts?
First on the atmosphere in the building, yeah. I'm encouraged to hear it sounds like they might get a lot more fans in the building for that Bengals game.
You gonna up it up again?
Yeah, they had what's her name, Virginia Kane, the Marion County health lady.
Mm-hmm.
They had her on Friday. Talked about they were really encouraged by the protocols followed in that Vikings game. Now I've gone back and watched pretty much all the game, but I did see a few crowd shots and not a lot of mask wearing in the building. I don't know if that'll be a slap on the wrist or who knows how that'll impact what the attendance will be for that Bengals game, because it's 2 road games down a row, and then the Bengals come to town. I think 15,000.
That's awesome.
I hope. That's just me just kind of wanting to see a bigger atmosphere in there and whatnot. Okay, offensively, I agree. You do need a little bit better from this offense. And I go back to the situational stuff, which I know I've said, and I still stand by this. I believe in Frank Reich and Phillip Rivers to get it done, because their careers, their history, say that they get it done in situational football, but you cannot survive with this current output on third down. They're worse than the NFL.
Yeah.
And you can't survive even in what you've done in drives in opposing territory. You still haven't gotten enough out of it there. So what worries me a little bit situationally is I do feel like it's a players not plays thing. And again, the no Campbell, we'll see when Burton comes back. T.Y. was better yesterday, but still, T.Y. he hasn't struck fear in the opponent. It's 16 games since he last had a 100-yard outing. So, for those reasons, I'm a little bit concerned about it. But again, I have faith in Frank Reich.
And back to the mask, I love how he was like, you know what? I'm not getting fined. We're just going with the shield.
Shield it.
I'm just going to shield.
Did you hear a fan sent that to him?
No, I did not.
Yeah, a fan invented it and sent it to him, and he talked about it after. I would go shield too.
Yeah.
Why
not?
The mask, you muffled, it's hard to breathe. I'd be rocking it's no fog shield, which is the fans' big pitch. Obviously Andy Reid looked like he was hotboxing on the sidelines, back in week 1. So, yeah.
This one's from Wake Spike. With the lack of a go-to receiver this year, create a better mismatch and well-rounded core, especially since 3 to 6 receivers are getting real game reps.
Boy, it's a really optimistic way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go there. It is like, okay, you are relying on guys to make some plays for you, which is nice, and it's good depth, but I still am a big believer, Chris, and man, when Chuck Pagano prepares for this football team this week, which just sounds wild to say out loud, but welcome to 2020, where do I put 2 defenders for an opposing wideout? Do I need to? That's probably the bigger question.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm the Colts, I want that question to be, yes, you got to do this each week. You have to commit to T.Y. Hilton. You have to take him away because he is a bona fide stud, by far number 1 wideout. So, yeah, I think that would be more of my concern. Yeah, nice depth, but again, if I have a playmaker that commands that sort of attention week in and week out, that's going to open things up for the other guys, and I don't think the Colts have that right now. T.Y.'s got to get back to that.
Yes.
T.Y. has got to get back to that.
Our next one's from Michael. Kevin, do you ever get tired of people asking you questions, always second-guessing the Colts staff and ownership? You hardly get very many positive tweets about how the team does, in his opinion, even after a win. He loves how you keep it balanced, never too high, never too low, understands that people have the right to their opinion and can question Ballard, Reich, etc., but at some point, it has to get old.
Wow, Michael. And I believe this was sent in before the tone of these questions today. First off, Michael, it does not get old at all. This is my job. This is what I've wanted to do my whole life. I get to cover an NFL team and go to NFL games and NFL practices. And yeah, I am, no, it does not get old whatsoever because I'm so passionate about what I do for a living. And you know what? I don't fault the tone of these questions or, yesterday wasn't a perfect game. Week 2 wasn't a perfect. Now, how many perfect games do you have in the NFL? I guess that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But I'm a fan, and I want Notre Dame football to be, damn good. And Brian Kelly's had a really, really good run at Notre Dame. At times, I feel like, fans probably don't give him enough credit for the run that they've had, considering his predecessors,
right,
and how they performed there. But I sit there and still want more, and do. And again, that's just part of being a fan. And I think, honestly, our fan base and certainly our generation, talking about you and I especially, we are used to the Colts winning.
Right,
I mean, I don't know. The first really Colts game that I have vivid images of is the AFC title game in '95, Colts Steelers. And I mean, ever since then, the Colts have won better than anybody in the NFL, not named the Patriots,
right,
really. So I think the bar is set pretty high here. And so, no, I think there are fair questions to be asked, and we're going to ask them, man. And we're going to answer the questions you guys ask.
Yep.
So these are literally the questions that we get each week. I have several saved over, probably more of the bigger picture stuff I have saved for Wednesday's podcast that we'll touch on as well. But, Michael, it does not get old, man. It doesn't. We do a bi-weekly podcast. I know we're going to have similar questions. I know that the topics might not be as wide-ranging. We try to be creative with that and keep it up. But, no, man, I'm doing what I love, so bring them on. Ask away.
Kevin, Gregory loves Jacoby, great guy, great locker room guy, great teammate, etc. That being said, why do the Colts keep him? If Rivers goes down, don't you take the opportunity to see what Eason has? You've seen Brissett, not great he feels, and he is very expensive backup. Oh yeah, I'm very expensive. But he is a good backup. Like, let's not ignore that. The Jets' backup yesterday was a guy by the name of Mike White. It's like the most computer-generated quarterback. Right. Like who? So, yeah, he's a good backup. He's expensive, but he's solid. And I also think in the back of the Colts' minds, they are very they like to prepare, I think, for the worst-case scenario at quarterback. I mean, you got Chad Kelly in your practice squad right now. You got Jacob Eason being a healthy scratch each week. I think in the back of their mind, they still think, man, if for some reason Rivers is like, I don't want to play football anymore, having some sort of contingency plans possible. Now, Jacoby's a free agent, obviously, but having contingency plans in place clearly matters to this team. I mean, there's a reason Jacoby Brissett's making $21 million, right? And the Colts are content with that. So that's why they keep him, and they obviously love him, for the reasons that you laid out right now. Got 2 more Twitter questions for this edition of the podcast. This one's from John. Don't want to overreact, but if Rhodes is solid at outside corner, I don't see an obvious hole in this defense. If Mo is emerging in the pass game, I don't see an obvious hole in the offense outside of the future quarterback. Assuming Eason isn't the guy, is this roster finally good enough at the top and also deep enough that we can afford to sell the farm for a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields. It just feels like we can't afford to go without our 2022 first-round pick based on how well this team seems to be coming together.
You know, John, I'll feel on that part. I think it's something we talked about last week. You do feel like the roster depth is in a much more stable place, comfortable place, whatever word you kind of want to throw in there. Now, there are still needs, and depth at cornerback and speed edge rusher and certainly support at wideout and offensive line depth and all of those things fall into that category. But, I would feel comfortable, you're never going to feel totally comfortable mortgaging any sort of draft. But knowing what that position means, I'd feel more comfortable there.
And we'll round things out with a question from Matt. Colts are -3 against Nick Foles, or I should say Colts are a 3-point favorite against Nick Foles. Bears haven't played anyone this year as of yet. Are you nervous about giving 3 points? Any early thoughts?
So that's what the early spread is? Man, -3 against the Bears. Boy, I'll give Matt Nagy some credit, man. That's a ballsy move to bench Trubisky as a 2-0. And I watched that game, and I mean, Trubisky wasn't good. He didn't look like Tolzien. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't great by any means, and I understand why he did it. But that's an aggressive move, and because what it does is it probably says, Mitch, we will never go back to you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's how I felt.
You were in a competition to begin with. You bench him after a 2-0 start to the season. Unless Nick Foles gets hurt, I mean, you aren't turning back to him. At least that's my thinking with it. It's kind of like Tannehill to Mariota, one of those situations. Yeah. Nick Foles was almost a Colt this past offseason. I think if the Rivers thing wouldn't have worked out, I think Nick Foles would have seriously been looked into. So, -3 against the Bears. I don't think the Bears are very good. Like 3-0, very good.
Right.
Their defense does have some pieces. Yeah, -3 is probably. I think that line will be closer to pick 'em by kickoff.
I do as well.
I don't know. Tariq Cohen, I saw tore his ACL yesterday. I say that because he's one of the few guys on my fantasy team that ever does anything. I got smoked again, by the way, in fantasy. Terrible, just terrible. So, -3 is probably a little bit too of my. I'm with you, man. Like I bet on Notre Dame earlier this year, which was just dumb. But I figured out I don't think I like doing that. I cheer anyways.
Right.
I don't need monetary value attached to my cheering.
Yeah, and what I don't want to do if I lose the game,
I don't want to be pissed in 2 ways.
Right. I don't want to also lose money. There's been times where I've bet against my team just so I'm like, at least I come out of this 500 somehow.
That's just, oh man, that's tough. I can't go there. But yeah, we'll obviously talk more about the Bears on Wednesday.
Cool.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, man. Yeah, like I said, we got a lot. I'm just scrolling through right now. We got a lot already for Wednesday's podcast. We'll hit on those. He's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. You guys know where to find us this week if you have any questions. 1075thefan.com for your written content. 2-1 Colts, 3-0 Bears later this week. Peace.